first thing I noticed was the silence. Not the kind you hear when you're sitting on a porch at night, the gentle kind, where cicadas hum and crickets chirp in the brush. No, this was the kind of silence that screamed. A silence so heavy it pressed into your ears, made you strain for any hint of life, a rustle, a snap, a breath. But there was nothing. Only the darkness of the cave ahead and the faint echo of a child's whimper behind me. My flashlight trembled in my hand, its beam carving a narrow line through the black. The walls glistened with something thick and fibrous, like giant spider silk stretched taut. My boots crunched over bones I couldn't bring myself to look at too closely. I kept my other hand on the boy's shoulder, trying to steady his shaking. "Stay close," I whispered. "Don't make a sound." Then, from above, a flutter. Not the flutter of a bat, not the faint whisper of wings. This was heavier, wetter, a sound like leather sheets dragging against stone. My light caught something high on the cave wall, 2 red orbs glowing back at me. Eyes, watching. That's when I knew I had made the wrong choice. I should never have come down this trail. But maybe I should back up.
My name is Ranger Daniel Holt, and I've worked in Great Smoky Mountains National Park for over a decade. I've pulled injured hikers from ravines, chased off black bears, and even once hauled a half-frozen drunk out of a river in the dead of winter. I know these trails, every twist, every fork. At least, I thought I did. It was late afternoon when the radio on my hip crackled to life. "Dispatch." "Holt, copy?" "Go ahead," I said. "We've got a report of a missing family, 5 total. Parents in their late 30s, 3 kids between 8 and 15. Last seen heading up the Alum Cave Trail this morning. They haven't checked in. No one spotted them coming down." I glanced at my watch. Past 5. The sun would be setting in a couple hours. That trail was one of the most popular in the park. It should have been crawling with day hikers. A whole family disappearing without anyone noticing? That didn't sit right. 10-4, I answered. "I'll start at the trailhead and work my way up." I grabbed my pack, flashlight, flare kit, first aid, radio, sidearm, and drove the short, winding road to the parking area. The lot was half empty by the time I pulled in. Families were loading up minivans, couples lacing off their boots, the last wave of hikers trickling out before dark. I asked around as I hiked upward. "Family of 5, 2 adults, 3 kids. Anybody see them today?" Most shook their heads. A couple thought they might have earlier, but couldn't be sure. Too many people on the trail. Still, something gnawed at me. On a busy path like Alum Cave, a family with 3 kids doesn't just vanish unnoticed. Parents stop for breaks, kids lag behind, make noise, draw attention. But everyone I asked, everyone, claimed they hadn't seen a group like that on their way down. By the time I'd hiked a mile up, I was unsettled. The Smokies are known for vanishings. Dennis Martin, Trenny Gibson, names whispered by rangers like cautionary tales. But 5 people at once? That was something else entirely. Then I saw it. A trail I'd never noticed before. At first, I thought I was mistaken. I've walked Alum Cave 100 times. There are no side paths this early on. But here it was. A narrow dirt cut, winding off into the trees, almost hidden behind brush, fresh, like it had been carved recently. I crouched, running my fingers across the soil. The edges were sharp, untrampled. It looked wrong, not like a gain trail, not like an official cut, almost as though it had appeared overnight. I checked the ground, sure enough. Footprints, several pairs. Adult boots, smaller prints, children's sneakers, headed down this path. "Damn it," I muttered. "Why'd you go this way?" I keyed my radio. "Holt, to base. Found possible side path. Doesn't match maps. Got fresh prints. Looks like the missing family may have gone this way. Continuing pursuit." A burst of static answered me, faint, garbled. "Copy. Signal weak. Proceed with caution. Then nothing. I stared into the new trail, heart thudding. The Smokies are old. Older than most of us can wrap our heads around. Old mountains, old forests, older stories. I grew up hearing them. Cherokee legends of Uktana, shadow figures, lights in the woods. I never put stock in them. Until now. I adjusted my pack, tightened my grip on the radio, and stepped off the known path into the unknown. The new trail swallowed me whole. The new trail pinched in like a throat. Rhododendron arched over me in a green tunnel, their waxy leaves whispering against my shoulders. The soil underfoot was loose and pale, not the dark, tamped earth of a used path. It felt unbroken, freshly peeled from the forest. I did what I've always done when something feels wrong. I slowed down and made it boring. I marked a trunk with a strip of orange flagging tape, logged a GPS ping, shot a bearing, checked my compass. The needle spun and steadied, spun again, like it was thinking it over. I waited for the satellites to bite. They didn't. The coordinates that popped up might as well have been a joke, numbers that didn't match the terrain I knew.
Copy, I told nobody, because it makes the body feel less alone to say things out loud. Trail deviation, marking as I go. A few minutes in, the noise of humanity behind me dropped away. No last bits of laughter from the main trail, no scuff of boots, not even birdsong. The Smokies are loud when they want to be, warblers, woodpeckers, the constant insect hymn, but up here the air went still as a held breath. Silence became a weight. I could hear my own pulse in my ears, and beyond that, every rustle my pack made sounded like a person crouched just out of sight. Evidence came small at first. A corner of a granola bar wrapper flattened into the dirt. A blue plastic hair clip crushed in a boot tread. Half an apple browning on a log, bitten, then dropped. I knelt and studied the prints again. Adults up front, kids in a ragged row behind, the littlest one weaving around the bigger prints to keep up. The smallest sneaker pattern had a drag on the left heel, like the kid was tired, stumbling. They'd come this way with purpose until they hadn't. I kept moving, flagging tape every 40 yards, bright slashes in the green. The trail had that wrongness to it, a geometry you feel more than see. Turns that were too tight, switchbacks that doubled on themselves like the forest was folding, slopes that looked shallow until your thighs burned. When I paused and turned to look back, the path behind me was there, and also somehow thinner, like distance stretched faster in one direction than the other. The smell changed too. The clean loam and leaf litter gave way to something metallic and damp, with a faint ammonia sting in it. It raised a chemical itch in the back of my throat. I wiped my mouth with my sleeve and felt grit. When I checked my palm, a dusting of gray lay across the skin, so fine it floated when I blew on it. It clung to the creases like ash, but when I rubbed, it didn't smudge. It flaked, like powdered scales. That's when I noticed the leaves. On certain branches, the green seemed muted, as if coated. I angled my flashlight on low, and the beam returned a ghostly sheen along the veins. A breeze, faint as a sigh, lifted through the tunnel, and that same gray dust shimmered in the light, like the forest had been dusted by a moth the size of a truck. I told myself it was limestone dust from a bluff just ahead. I kept moving. The path dropped to a shallow ravine split by a creek no wider than a yard. A log crossed it, a sweet gum sapling felled and laid recently. It still bled sap where the blade bit. On the far bank, a little boy's drawing lay pinned under a stone. Crayon on cheap paper. A mountain shaped like a triangle and 5 stick figures with round heads and straight smiles, a red sun in the corner. The paper was wrinkled where wet had kissed it. I slid it into my notebook without thinking why. I tried the radio again as I stepped over the creek. Halt to base, I've got confirmed sign of the missing family. Unofficial spur trail with fresh tool marks. Possible environmental hazard ahead, dust or pollen causing irritation.
requesting backup to my last known GPS ping plus 10 minutes north by northeast. Static chewed the words to pieces and spat them back like this.
H, C, Ka, Wi, Ping, Chun.
Say again? I asked, and the line hissed like something breathing in a wall. I pushed on. The dust thickened. My lips went numb. The longer I walked, the more the forest pressed in with a hospital stillness. I found the first big sign on a maple trunk just after the creek, 4 deep gouges raked down the bark. Not the kind of bare leaves, no burrs or hook marks from claws catching and pulling. These were clean, parallel, and glistening with sap as if something had set a hand there to steady itself. Above the gouges, the bark was dusted gray, and when I lifted my light, the particles sparked back at me with a dull iridescence. In the middle of that dust, as if printed by pressure, was a suggestion of a palm. Too long, too thin. No, scare easy. The body has its own truth, though, and mine started to move like it had a mind outside of me. Quieter steps, shoulders tucked, neck lowering unconsciously to make myself smaller. The first cry didn't register as human. It came thin through the trees, trembled, and then died, like wind in a bottle. I froze and let the forest settle around me, counted to 10, and heard it again, but from a different angle. Not a cry, I realized. A call. 3 notes, descending. Mourning dove? No, not quite. A sound made by lungs that had learned the shape of human sounds without caring. I found the campsite 16 minutes later by my watch, though it felt like an hour and a half lived in a minute. The path widened abruptly into a pocket of clearing where storm-tossed hemlock had opened a scar years before. Someone had strung a cheap blue tarp between 2 trunks. Beneath it, a toppled cooler bleeding melted ice into the leaves, an enamel camp mug on its side, a father's wallet spilled and open, credit cards fanned like a hand of losing cards, a driver's license smiling up at the canopy. There were graham crackers ground into paste in the dirt where someone had fallen. A small sneaker lay on its side with the lace tied in double knots. 2 marshmallow sticks, blackened, pointed toward the back of the clearing like the hands of a clock, both staring at midnight. There were 2 sets of sign. One told about living, the little radius of a family night, a circle where they would have sat, a scuff where someone had stood suddenly. The other told about leaving, drag marks wide and steady like tarps pulled quickly across ground, a tumble of footprints trampled in a hurry, a wave of trash, a trail of it, pulling away into the trees like breadcrumbs thrown by a frightened hand. The litter had its own logic, tearing a paper plate in half every 30 feet, dropping a water bottle cap here, the bottle itself there. Someone had tried to leave a path to follow.
I crouched beside a dent in the earth where a knee had struck and picked up a torn corner of a map brochure. The park's stylized bear looked back at me with a smile. On the reverse, in a child's blunt letters, Mom plus Dad plus Lex plus Matt plus K equals us, drawn in a rainbow marker. The mother's name on the license matched one of the names. I folded the map and slid it into my pocket, like a promise. The dust lay heavier here. It fused to the edges of the mug. It made the tarp glitter like frost. When I touched the tarp, my finger came away filmed with that gray powder, and the skin itched where it sat. I brushed it off, and it flaked like old paint. I thumbed my radio again, forcing my voice steady. Holt to base. I've located the family's camp. Signs of a rapid departure and a marked trail of litter leading deeper. Heavy particulate in the air, unknown origin. Requesting immediate support. I'm at... The GPS screen blinked, nonsense. The radio crackled, then the signal dropped entirely. A flat death tone and then silence. Battery was fine. Sky above me had gone from blue to a white that felt closer than the clouds had any right to be. As if the clearing were inside a room painted like day. Copy lost, I said out loud. Because pretending someone heard it helps you put your foot forward. I considered waiting. Standard protocol says you don't go deep alone if you can help it. But a trail of litter pulled into the trees like a hand waving you on is its own kind of demand. And there were 3 kids out here, one with a left heel drag. Whatever I thought I knew about caution folded under that. I cinched the pack, checked my sidearm's weight at my hip, touched the flare case once, marked 2 more trunks with tape. Then I followed the trash line. The forest changed. Rhododendron gave way to laurel and rock. The ground sloped toward a bowl I couldn't see, but felt like a pressure drop in my ears. The air cooled with a damp that crept under my collar. The dust thickened until it was a taste. That faint ammonia edge hung like a veil. Somewhere ahead, water moved, flat and slow and echoing, like it was inside stone.
And then I found the mouth. It wasn't a proper entrance like the dry mouths of the park's show caves. This was a jag of stone that opened between 2 slumped shoulders of rock, like something had fallen asleep and left its lips parted. Cold air breathed out of it. The trees around the hole leaned away. The litter trail ended here in a final flourish, half a sleeve from the child's red hoodie, snagged on a thorn, a camp spoon, a crushed juice box, the printed corner of a zoo ticket from months ago. People keep the strangest things in their pockets, and they don't think they're going to be markers of where the world narrows. I stood there for a long moment, the light outside pooling around my boots, the dark inside pooling around my knees, each of them pretending to be the other. The cave gave off a smell like wet pennies and mothballs and old attics. It made my teeth want to grit. The dust lay thickest at the threshold. When I stepped, the beam of my light made a constellation out of it. "Base, this is Holt," I tried one last time, entering a cave system at the terminus of an uncharted spur. Evidence strongly indicates victims are inside, marking entry with tape and carving Holt entry with time. I wrote it with my knife on the stone, Holt entry, 5:48 p.m., and it felt like scratching a name into the hull of a ship you're not sure will make it back to harbor. Inside, the temperature dropped 10 degrees in 10 steps. My breath showed. The floor sloped in a shallow ramp, slick in spots where mineral seep had polished it. My beam slid over the walls, and the walls answered back with threads, thick and white and coarse, stretched in ropes across the rock, not delicate like a spider's, but like something fabricating with intent. They held pebbles in their grip, leaves, a branch, an old soda can fossilized in gloss. In places, those ropes combed together, layered and layered, a curtain a person could hide behind if a person wanted to forget they were a person. A soft sound came from somewhere deeper, like something plucked the lowest string on a bass and let it hum. It was so low I almost mistook it for my own blood. "Hello?" I called, so gently it wasn't much more than breath. "Lex? Matt? Kay? Mrs. Barker? Mr. Barker? It's Ranger Holt." The cave answered with the drip of water, the kind of drip that counts time the way old clocks do. I turned my head to check the exit, a square of daylight that already looked smaller than the size of my decision. Bright on the dust, bright on the first line of webbing, the forest was a painting now. And beyond my light, red. No, that was my brain putting the wrong story over things. That's eyes go red in a beam sometimes, that was all. Reflective capillaries, not malice. Something brushed my shoulder, a thread I hadn't seen. It stuck. When I peeled it away, it came with a sound like tape ripping, and it left a tacky patch on my sleeve where the fabric flattened. The smell got sharper. A hush rolled through the space in a way that felt intentional, as if the cave had lungs and held a breath to listen. "Stay close," I told the quiet. "Don't make a sound." I took 3 more steps and saw the first cocoon. It hung like a pale fruit from the rock, bigger than a man, shaped not by a shape inside it, but by layers and layers of thread that had made something out of nothing. The surface had the texture of dried glue. In the beam, something inside caught a shine. Bone? Metal? From a belt buckle? The cocoon's bottom tapered to a point, and that point dripped the slowest syrup I'd ever watched fall, stringing itself out into a stalactite of glue that never quite reached the floor. I didn't go closer to Ayed, because there were more past it, and more beyond those, and for the first time since stepping off the main trail, I knew exactly why the forest had gone quiet. The silence wasn't empty. It was occupied. From behind a slab of fallen rock, something shuffled. Too light to be the size of the shapes hanging above, too quick to be old. My light jumped to it and froze. Eyes. Not red this time. Blue, washed out with fear and dark. A face smeared with dirt and gray dust. A small hand around a toy car, white-knuckled. The littlest sneaker, heel worn down on the left. He blinked at the light like it hurt.
"Hey," I whispered, and my voice came out gentler than I thought I could manage. "Hey, buddy. Lex? Is your name Lex?" He shook his head. "Matt," he said, voice dry and hoarse, like he'd borrowed the word from someone else's throat. "I'm 8. A sound, then, from above us. Not a bat. The heavy, wet, leather-on-stone slide I'd heard in the memory the story started with. A sound that carried sighs in it. My light, suddenly small as a match, climbed the cave wall on its own as if the beam were a hand trying to find a handhold. The dust fell in a curtain. The webbing sang like strings brushed by a breeze that wasn't there. I put my hand on the boy's shoulder. It was like placing my hand on a sparrow, so much bone and heat, so ready to fly the wrong way if I startled him. "Stay close," I said. "Don't make a sound." And with the entry behind us shrinking like the last coin in a slot, I started to back us out of that first chamber and toward the light we had left, the cave listening to the shape of our steps, as if deciding what kind of thing we were. Outside, somewhere impossible and far, the forest remembered itself, and a bird laughed once, sharp and short, like a joke told by someone who didn't think it was funny. We didn't laugh. We moved. I kept my hand firm on Matt's shoulder as we edged deeper along the cavern wall. Every instinct in me screamed to run, to scoop him up and bolt for the daylight, but the silence was too complete, too suffocating. Something in here was waiting, watching. The boy's breathing was ragged. He clutched that little toy car like it was armor. His eyes darted to the cocoons strung across the cavern. Some were fresh, slick and pulsing with faint movement inside. Others were brittle, split husks, their contents long since drained away. One of the fresher ones was shaped too much like a woman's body, another broader, a man. My gut sank. I whispered low, "Your family." Matt's lips trembled. He didn't answer, but his eyes said everything. My flashlight flicked across the far wall. For a moment, I thought I saw carvings, shapes etched into stone. I steadied the beam. They weren't carvings at all, but scratches, deep gouges, like talons dragged deliberately into the rock. A message written in violence. The low hum returned, that bass-deep vibration, but this time it wasn't just sound. It moved through the stone, rattled in my bones. The webs above us quivered in answer. Then the air shifted. A draft, heavy as a bellows, swept through the chamber, cold and carrying that strange ammonia metal stench. My beam caught movement high above, something massive shifting against the stalactites. 2 eyes flared open. Not animal eyes, not a reflection. These were alive, glowing like molten embers, fixed directly on us. I froze, my breath locked in my chest. The creature unfolded from the ceiling. Its wings scraped rock as it spread them, membranes stretched taut and veined like burned parchment. The body was half man, half nightmare, elongated limbs ending in clawed fingers that dug effortlessly into stone. Its chest heaved, and with every breath, dust cascaded down like ash from a furnace. And that head, human enough to horrify, inhuman enough to paralyze, with those burning red eyes and a mouth that seemed too wide, lined with needle-thin teeth. The boy whimpered. The creature moved instantly, like it had been waiting for the sound. A shriek split the cavern, a sound so loud, so sharp, I felt blood rush in my ears. The webs vibrated like strings plucked in unison. Pebbles rained from the ceiling. I shoved Matt behind me, fumbling at my belt. My fingers closed on the flare case. "Close your eyes," I hissed. The flare spat to life with a violent hiss, flooding the chamber with red fire. The effect was immediate. The creature recoiled, its shriek turning guttural. It covered its eyes with one clawed hand, the wings thrashing violently against the stone. Dust and webbing shredded through the air, choking the chamber with white ash. "Move!" I barked, grabbing Matt's arm. We stumbled toward the cave mouth, my flare casting wild shadows that made the creature's silhouette look even larger, even more monstrous. Behind us, the shriek rose again, angrier this time, hunting. We ran. The cavern walls closed in, narrowing into a tunnel. My light stuttered across more cocoons. Deer, wild boar, hikers' packs fused into webs. The flare light bled everything crimson, turning the world into a nightmare vision. The creature followed. I heard it scraping against the walls, the heavy beat of its wings battering the cavern, the echo of claws catching stone. Every time its eyes flared in the dark behind us, my stomach flipped, screaming that we weren't prey escaping. We were prey being toyed with. Matt tripped on a rock and fell hard. I yanked him up by his jacket, the flare spitting sparks as it sputtered. We were close. I could see the faint light of the entrance ahead, but the shriek came again, closer now, echoing like it was inside my skull. The flare died. Darkness crashed over us like a wave. Matt screamed. I swung my flashlight up, just in time to catch the eyes again. They were inches above us, descending. I fired. The gunshot ripped through the cave, deafening in the enclosed space. The muzzle flash lit the beast for one horrifying instant, its face twisted in fury, its wings blotting out the stone above. The shot slammed into its chest, jerking it back, but it didn't fall. It roared, a sounding. When I dared to look out, the creature was gone. The cave mouth glowed faintly ahead. Salvation. But I knew it wasn't over, not by a long shot. The cave mouth was a pale wound in the darkness ahead. I hauled Matt to his feet and forced us toward it, lungs burning, boots slipping on slick stone. Every step felt stolen. We burst into the night air like divers breaking the surface. I sucked in deep gulps, almost choking on the cold mountain wind. Behind us, the cavern roared with sound, wings beating, claws gouging stone, that shriek tearing the air in half. The boy clung to me, trembling. "We're not safe yet," I told him, though I hated how true it was. The forest should have been a comfort. The familiar smells of moss, pine, and earth, the comfort of space after stone walls. But it wasn't. It was worse. The trees loomed black, their branches knotted like claws. The trail back was swallowed in shadow, and every shape looked like it might move if I blinked. The night was so quiet, I could hear our own ragged breathing. And beneath it, something else. A low whoosh, a heavy thud, the unmistakable beat of wings. I turned my light upward, just as a massive shadow glided overhead, blotting out the sliver of moon. Its wingspan stretched wider than the trail itself. The red eyes flashed once in the canopy, then vanished. It was toying with us. "Run," I told Matt. "Don't stop for anything." We ran. The trail felt wrong, twisting sharper than before, the roots jutting higher like they wanted to snag our feet. I knew this park better than anyone, but under that sky, chased by that thing, it was like running through a place I'd never seen. A crash behind us, branches breaking, trunks splitting. The beast was dropping into the tree line, I fired a shot over my shoulder. The recoil almost tore the pistol from my hand. The bullet sparked off stone, and the roar that followed rattled the marrow in my bones. The boy stumbled. I scooped him into my arms, his weight nothing against the adrenaline tearing through me. I pounded down the trail, lungs screaming, the air filled with dust again, like a storm cloud rolling with us, coating my tongue in grit.
Something slammed into the ground just behind us. The impact shook the trail, sent dirt up in a plume. I swung the flashlight around in time to see a claw the size of my arm gouge a furrow in the soil where my foot had been seconds before. "Keep your eyes closed," I barked, lighting another flare with one shaking hand. The red blaze tore open the night. Trees lit up like bloody spears, shadows jagged and violent. The creature shrieked, staggering back a step, wings curling to shield its eyes, but only for a moment. It wasn't just hunting us anymore. It was herding. The flare hissed in my hand, its light sputtering as the chemical core burned fast. I hurled it down the trail, and for an instant, the woods glowed hellish red, and in that glow, I saw them. More webs, strung between trees, threads thick as rope, caught leaves dangled like ornaments. And in one, the husk of a deer, strung up and drained. This thing hadn't just taken the cave. It had claimed the woods, too. The flare died. Darkness crashed back. We ran, blind. My light swung wild, cutting trees into sharp fragments, painting red eyes where there were none. The wings thundered overhead, sometimes behind us, sometimes ahead, as though the thing could bend the trail itself. At one point, a shadow dropped so close that the wind of its passing knocked me to my knees. Nat screamed, and I shoved him behind me, gun up. My last 2 bullets cracked into the night. One hit flesh, I know it did. The screech was different, rawer, angrier. But it didn't slow. We stumbled on, half running, half falling down the trail. My legs burned, my vision swam, and Matt's sobs broke into dry hiccups against my chest. Then, a sound. Not the monster. Not the forest. Voices. Far off at first, then closer. Human. The low murmur of a group talking, the clatter of trekking poles on stone, a burst of laughter that felt so alien in the silence it nearly broke me in half. I stopped dead.
The wings overhead faltered. The red eyes flared one last time in the tree line. Then, silence. It retreated, not crashing through the woods, not storming away, just gone, like it had never been there at all. The dust thinned, the trees no longer leaned, the night sounds, tentative, returned. The single owl call, the trickle of a creek. I fell to my knees, clutching Matt tight, heart hammering so hard I thought my ribs would snap. We were alive, for now. The voices drew closer until flashlights pierced the trees ahead. I staggered into the glow, Matt still clutched to my chest, my arms trembling from the weight of him and from the terror still coursing through me. "Ranger Holt?" one of them called. I recognized the uniform. Another ranger, Jacobs, leading a team of volunteers with search dogs straining at their leashes. Relief hit me so hard my knees buckled. I half collapsed as they rushed forward, hands catching my arms, pulling the boy from me, wrapping him in a blanket. Matt buried his face against the rescuer's shoulder, still shaking, but alive. Alive. Jacobs looked at me hard. "What the hell happened out here?" I opened my mouth, but the words stuck. I wanted to say everything. About the cave, the cocoons, the red eyes, about wings that blotted out the moon, about the flare light that barely held it back. But what came out was broken, jagged. Found their campsite. Something took them. The trail. There's a trail that's not supposed to be there. It led us to a cave. The family's They're gone. Except him. The team exchanged uneasy looks. One of the volunteers muttered, "Cave? There aren't any mapped caves on this side." I turned, lifting my flashlight, pointing back the way we came. "There." I marked it with tape. "Right off Alum Cave, you'll see." We retraced our steps with the team behind us. The dogs pulled anxiously at their leads, noses to the ground, whining. I felt the forest pressing close again, waiting to reveal what I'd found. But when we reached the fork, it wasn't there.
Just the main trail, worn smooth by decades of boots. No cut, no brush cleared, no gouged earth, no tape on the trunks where I had marked. Just forest. I walked up and down the stretch, heart hammering, shining my beam into the undergrowth. Nothing. Not a trace of the offshoot path that had swallowed us whole. "It's here!" I shouted, more desperate than I meant. "It was right here! I found their prints! I followed!" "Halt!" Jacobs interrupted gently. "There's nothing here." The volunteers shifted uncomfortably. One of them whispered, "Stress will make us see things. He's been out here too long." I turned on them, fury breaking through the exhaustion. "I didn't imagine a goddamn thing. That boy's alive because I went down that trail. You think he crawled out of the dirt?" All eyes shifted to Matt. He stood wrapped in the oversized blanket, shivering, his toy car still clutched in his small fist. He looked up at me, then at the others. His lips parted, but no words came. He just nodded, slowly. They bundled him off to safety, murmuring comforts, promising hot cocoa and warmth. I stood alone a moment longer, staring into the trees where the path had been. My ears strained, waiting for the beating of wings, the hiss of dust. Nothing. Only the normal forest sounds, tentative, but real. Jacobs clapped a hand on my shoulder. "You did good, Holt. You brought him back. That's what matters." But his eyes said something else. "You've lost it out here." I walked back down with the team in silence, the weight of the woods pressing at my back. 2 days later, I sat in the ranger station, staring at the paperwork spread across my desk. The official report read clinical, bloodless. Family of 5 reported missing, 4 presumed deceased, 1 minor located alive. Search continues. Nothing about the trail. Nothing about the cave. Nothing about the creature. I held the pen in my hand, debating whether to tell the truth. I could write it all down, but what good would it do? Who would believe me? A knock at the door broke my thoughts. Matt stood there, small in the doorway, a social worker hovering behind him. He clutched a piece of paper. "Made this for you," he whispered. He handed me the drawing. Crayons again. A black shape with wings stretched wide, towering over stick figures caught in red webs. 2 red eyes glowing above it all. My hand trembled as I held it. "You remember?" I said softly. He just nodded. The social worker ushered him away. I sat there long after they left, staring at the picture until the colors bled in my vision. The Smokies are old. Older than memory. Older than maps. And some trails aren't meant to be found. But I knew one thing with absolute certainty. That thing was still out there. Waiting. Watching. And someday, someone else will hear the beating of wings in the silence. And that's where our story ends, at least for now. A boy saved, a family lost, and a trail that no one else could ever find again. In the Smokies, some things are older than names, older than maps, and older than memory. And if you ever hear silence fall too heavy in those woods, listen carefully. You might hear the wings. If you enjoyed this story, let me know by hitting the like button. It really helps push these tales out to more listeners. Drop a comment below if you've ever hiked the Smokies or heard stories about strange vanishings in the Appalachians. I'd love to know your thoughts. And of course, don't forget to subscribe for more dark stories from the woods, the mountains, and beyond. Your support means the world. Until next time, stay safe out there.